Well, good evening. It's good to see everyone this evening. And tonight, if you would, take your hymn books from in front of you, and we're going to turn to page 433. Page 433, It Is Well With My Soul. And we're going to stand and we'll sing the first and the last stanza. So stanza 1, stanza 4. So we'll stand if you're able, and we'll sing these two stanzas. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. On the last. And Lord, haste the day when my faith shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The drum shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. Y'all may be seated. Oh, there you are. I was looking. I was like, where did Brother Tavener run off to? I was about to say, I'm not speaking again tonight, but when I didn't see him, I was like, maybe I am. But anyway, I'll turn it over to Brother.
Thank you, Brother Gerald. We had a little bit of a mix-up tonight. We had a couple of us deacons ready to speak tonight. I thought he was taking my place last week while I was sick, and we have it anyway. We're going to get it all worked out. We're going to speak to you. And I'm going to do my thing. Me and Mr. Mike went out back, and we arm wrestled for it. And no, we didn't. But he probably would have. So if you would turn to Matthew chapter 5. So let me ask you tonight, when you think of if I was to tell you, think of a difference maker, who would come to your mind? Who is a difference maker in your book? What's the first person that jumps into your brain? Jesus, okay. Here on earth, a lot of times when we think about difference makers, we think about, when I start thinking about who's a difference maker, I'm coming up with all these people that did grand things most of the time. If you think about it, you think about people that have done great and mighty things. They have created this and that. They've done just mighty, mighty things in this world. That is a difference maker. But there's a lot of other difference makers out there. As I was talking with Mom today, there's some difference makers that have made a world of change accidentally. They have created things accidentally. You ever heard of the straw that broke the camel's back? What does that really mean? There's a lot of stuff pile up and eventually something topples things over and gets it going. It's not always one snowflake that's responsible for a blizzard. It's multiple snowflakes, right? But it takes each snowflake. And that's what we can be as a difference maker God calls for us to be a difference maker, and it's not necessarily having to do great and mighty things, but doing what we can do. And that's what I want to speak to you about tonight. So if we could go to the Lord in prayer first. And Heavenly Father, we count it a blessing to be in your house, dear Lord, and we pray, Lord, that you will bless over your word tonight. Dear Lord, give me the words to say. And dear Lord, help us to be able to glean from this passage and this study, dear Lord, things that would be pleasing to you. And dear Lord, help us to all be a church of difference makers. And dear Lord, Wednesday night crowd, I know I'm, so to speak, preaching to the choir, dear Lord, but we can all gain from that and know that what we do is important to you and according to your being obedient to you. And Lord, just quiet our minds tonight and just help us to learn and just focus on you. In your name we pray. Amen. Excuse me. Oh, yeah. I've been doing a lot of coughing lately, so that's lesson learned. Okay, that's better. So in Matthew chapter 5, if you would go to verse 12. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Ye are all salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but be cast out, and to be trodden under the foot of men. For ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. So let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So when it talks about being a difference maker, along this time in the Bible, it talks about the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes are ways in which God wants us to live and how he wants us to be. And he talks a lot about being blessed. What does it mean to be blessed? It could take on a lot of different, I'm sorry? To know him. What a blessing it is. And he blesses us every day. Just the sustenance that he gets us through every day. I've seen it this week. Not had particularly the best week this week. You know, it started with a rock on the windshield first thing Monday morning. Pow! I'm sitting there eating a little squishy kids thing, and all of a sudden, that seems crunchy. That's odd. It was a crown, had totally imploded, fell all to pieces. So anyway, I'm hyped up on some good ibuprofen right now. I'm good. But yeah, it's just been one of them things but you know what? The Lord has been good through all of it. And I've got a lot of stuff going on in my life, but it's just a season. And that's what I can dwell on. And I think a lot of people that know God could crush under that. But I know it's just a season. I'm always looking for that next month to be better. It's just as full as the previous month, but I'm always looking at that next month. So I have a far richer blessing in life that Jesus talks about. He says, Jesus' words are, happy are ye. And to be a difference maker means that you are in God's will. And there's no greater happiness than to be in God's will and doing what he wants you to do. So we'll read you something from Billy Graham. He said, the people who followed him were unique in their generation. They turned the world upside down because their hearts have been turned right side up. The world has never been the same. History took a sharp turn for the better. People began to behave like human beings. Dignity, nobility, and honor followed in the wake of Christianity. Art, music, science, sparked by this new interpretation of life's meaning, began to progress and develop. Mankind began at long last to resemble again the image of God, which was how he was created. Society began to feel the impact of the Christian influence. Injustice, inhumanity, and intolerance were dislodged by the tidal wave of spiritual power which was released by Christ. As F.W. Boredom once said, the carpenter of Nazareth has encouraged the goldsmiths of the ages. Virtually every significant social movement in Western civilization, from the abolishment of slavery, the child labor laws, owes its origin to the influence of Jesus Christ. Centuries have rolled by since that initial surge of spiritual life. The stream of Christianity has flowed unceasingly, sometimes at flood time, but more often than ebb tide. So Jesus set the example from us, and he was the greatest person that influenced changes in history that's out there. It changed the whole world. Does Jesus expect us to be just like him? You know, he was God, but he gave us the pattern, and he wanted us to be like him. He preached a lot about ways in which we could influence this world. In the world, he gave us the Beatitudes, and you know how blessed a man is. Unfortunately, the world wants to go Beatitudes backwards, right? I see that more and more. The world is messed up because Satan wants to do everything opposite than God, and he wants people to think opposite from God. He's also going to tell you that whatever you do is not going to make a difference. So he's always fighting against difference makers. So we need to try to be that blessing. When I talk about the differences of opinion, I don't know if you've noticed, but who talks louder gets their point across more, right? That's the way it is now. It seems like this argument that goes back and forth, and somebody can talk louder. Jesus changed things. When he came in, a lot of people were disappointed because they thought Jesus was going to come in and be a conqueror, right? And he started teaching this really strange concept to them. Instead of fighting against the Romans, if one of the Romans slapped you on the cheek, what did he say to do? What? You know, that's not what they were looking for. It was radical. You know, it was such a change there. And then in your poverty, you are rich. That's not what they wanted to hear, right? They wanted to be free of the Roman government. They wanted to be their own people, wanted to be rich. It was different, certainly different. Jesus was saying, the question is Jesus saying, try hard to be poor in spirit? If you try hard enough and become poor in spirit enough, then you'll be blessed. Well, somebody that's poor in spirit has nothing going for them. Poor in spirit is different. Is not really what he's talking about. He's talking about being humble. I'm not poor in spirit, but I have a humble spirit about me. And blessed, basically what he's saying, and thank goodness he was this way, is that Jesus did a lot with the people that were marginalized. He did a lot with broken people. Praise the Lord, I'm broken. I was broken. That's why I think Jesus was very controversial. He would go out and say, bring people that are by the highways and bring these people. And he got criticized a lot for eating with people that he shouldn't be eating with. You know, he was a Jew, you know. But thank goodness he was showing us the example that everybody is important. Difference makers can come from everywhere. He didn't just use the strong, the rich, the powerful. You know, James Bryan Smith said, talking about the many downtrodden people in Jesus' day, the eyes that normally looked down in shame suddenly gazed at Jesus with hope and joy. Females, sick people, the poor, second-class half-Jews, the person whose life had been broke by bad choices all heard good news. Who, me? Is he talking to me? I am welcome in the kingdom of heaven. Is he here for me now? That was very good news. So, speaking to all of those that were downtrodden, people that didn't feel like they had a lot of use. And then he told them in verse 13, as we go back to that, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its savor. We hear Brother Josh say that a lot about go out and be the salt in the community. What does that really mean? What was salt used for in those days? A little bit of everything. It was used for flavoring, used for a lot of different things. He also compared things to light. All right, anybody know what that is? It's salt, I'll tell you. It's salt. Oh, yeah, salt in a shaker. And then also light. Hope it's working. There you go. Okay, light. Not a whole lot of light, But if I turn the lights out in here, would it be a lot of light? Okay. Light alone can dispel the darkness. As a matter of fact, the definition of darkness is no light. Okay? And if I have light, I don't have any darkness. You know, we can have a darkened condition, but we have some light there. I think about what light means to people, and matter of fact, we were talking about it right before church. When I was in graduate school, I went over to Sweden and did some studying over there and wrote my thesis based upon something I did over in Sweden. And when I was there, it was during the summertime, and the sun would go down to the horizon, go just almost a little bit below it, then it would come right back up. Sunlight all the time. Every hotel room, everywhere you had room darkening shades because it was light all the time. Now, you would think that would be bad, right? Well, the converse of that, in the wintertime, guess what happened? It's the opposite. There were times where the sun never really came up above the horizon. It would get just kind of a little bit like dusk and go back. Thank goodness I was not there for that. And one of the things that they told us there in Sweden is that the Scandinavian countries had a high, or at least they used to have a high suicide rate. Lack of light, that light, just the pure darkness, I mean, it works on your mood, you know. Well, we have a whole world that's dark spiritually. What type of mood are the people in this world? Pretty sad mood sometimes. They need light. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the condition that they have in the Scandinavian countries is called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. You know, they're sad. And I thought about that. So many people in America are sad because they live in darkness and they need light. So that's what Jesus is saying in here, that we should, verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Dave Earley said here, I suppose that it was possible to get by without salt and light, but who would want it? Just salt and light were necessary in this time for improving physical quality and life in the first century. Salt and light is also necessary now for improving the spiritual quality of life today. The world is rotten without salty nature of the people of God. It tastes without seasoning of Christianity. It is a dark and depressing place without the light of God's truth. It thirsts for everything other than God if we are not causing it the thirst for God. How big is this salt granule? How big would you say that is? It's minuscule, right? Just so tiny. It's something so small can make a big difference. There was a story about this Scandinavian country, going back to that area, about this town. They started getting this water. The water had really choked down to nothing coming down this creek. Well, they hired this guy to keep the creek. It's kind of an older fella, and he lived up the mountain. Well, they said, well, we'll give you money if you keep the creek cleaned out, you know. And he did, and for years they enjoyed beautiful streams and all, and they would just automatically pay this guy, you know, every year. And then one time they had a meeting there in town, and they were like, well, the stream's beautiful. What's he really doing? Let's stop paying this guy. So they stopped paying the guy. What do you think happened in a couple of years of not keeping the stream clean? They didn't realize that what he was doing was having an effect, and the water went bad, you know. So he was doing something that nobody saw, but it had a great effect. And salt's so tiny, you can't even see it, but does it have an effect on things? You know, with my blood pressure, I don't need to eat a lot of salt. However, I still get fussed at, and I have my whole life. When we sit down to eat something, what's the first thing I do? Taste it? No. Salt it. I salt it. But back in Bible times, they did not have Lowry for flavoring things. They did not have Lowry seasoning. They didn't have Charlie Mills sauce. Everybody knows what that is around here, right? They didn't have all that good stuff. They didn't even have, in that time, they may have some herbs or something like that. And my daughter-in-law is a really good cook, and she's a nutritionist. And, you know, she's trying to always substitute good things for the bad things to me. I hope she's not listening tonight. But anyway, but she'll make soup and she'll like fix it up with all this pepper and spices and stuff and not salt it because she's making it healthy. No, when she's not looking, I'm over there. But, you know, you can use all types of flavorings, but let's face it, salt just has a... Anybody on a no-sodium diet? If you are, Lord bless you, because I declare salt means a lot to me, a lot to taste there. It's a necessity. But it also, in Bible times, they did not have refrigerators either. So if you caught a fish or you had any type of animal, if you didn't have some way to preserve it there, it was gone in no time. Nothing would last. So salt was a big time preserver that they would need. They would need to use that. And in the biblical times, if you had to say, where did they get their salt from? Where do you think they got it? In the Middle East. The Dead Sea. They would have it trucked in. There were people that made a lot of money in salt back in them days. That was somebody that was probably made a lot of money in their trade there. They would deliver the salt out. Seems like you can always try to season something with bacon or meat or something, but it's salt, there's no substitute for it there. But it says how just a little dab will do you to make a difference there. And we're called to be a light in the world, into an unflavored world. As I said, our world is dark. Without God, it's unflavored as well. And we are what he calls to add flavor. In our communities, our prisons, you know, everywhere. Anybody ever over-salted something you were cooking and had it where it was almost unedible, you know? Throw it out to the dog, he wouldn't eat it either. But anyway, you can over-salt things too. But just a little tiny bit is needed. Also, if I cut off all the lights in this room and it's totally dark, you can't see anything. Anybody been in total darkness? Okay. We've been in several things where we go up to the mountains, we go into the caverns, and you go back, and they're like, okay, we're going to show you total darkness. And they cut off everything. It's like, whoa, you know. Was it Mom and Dad and myself were up in one of the caverns, and they showed us that. And that's cool. It's total dark. We're walking. And all of a sudden, lights just went out. They had a power failure. It won't long. People came running down there to get us, you know, with flashlights shining, you know, through the light down there. But one of the things in total darkness, if this room was totally dark, this is not a very big flashlight, right? But what would that mean in darkness there? It would give you a point to follow. Even a pinprick of light can give you something to follow in total darkness. It can help you out. I'm a safety manager, and we have emergency exit lights that we put up. Those are glow in the darks. But anyway, we have emergency exit lights. And you know, that doesn't give out, doesn't give out a great deal of what you would call lumens or light, but it gives you enough that if the lights are out, it's just enough that you can make your way to that exit and get out. You know, so just a little tiny bit. God calls for us to give just a little tiny bit for him. Harold Myra says, he who does the will of God is more than world history, more than nature, more than all the peaks of intellect, more than the whole cosmos. He is more than all of this. Do you understand? Even though he be one of the nobodies, he dwells beneath the Father's good pleasure. So God asks us to be that pinprick. He asks us to be that little bit of salt in this world. In verse 13, it says, if salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thence, therefore, good for nothing, but cast out and trodden under the feet of men. Interesting thing with the salt, they would normally get it from the Dead Sea, and it would be in blocks. They would get it from the edges, and they get a big block of this salt. Now, if it was outside and in the elements and it got wet, it would take away all of the flavor out of this. It would take away the tanginess, the good portions of salt. So he's saying if salt loses its flavor or savor, what good is it? Well, basically, it turns into a poison. It's actually bad for you if it's lost the savor and you get it, because if you have too much salt, that's bad on your body, right? And then if it doesn't have the flavor or the tang or the saltiness, you don't know how much salt maybe you're getting. You could eat too much, things of that nature. But he talks about it being thrown out. There was no way to get rid of this salt. You couldn't put it out in the fields. It would kill the crops. You couldn't put it in the well. It would contaminate the water. I mean, you couldn't put it on food. But they found one good thing that they could do it with it. And they would put it out on the roads. They would spread it out on the roads. And what do you think it would do to that road? What benefit would it serve to that road as a poisonous thing at this point? It would keep the weeds killed. It was nothing good about it other than just to be put down there, being trod upon, keep the weeds down. That's why they put it on the road, so you wouldn't have the weeds growing between the rocks or whatever. And they put it down there. So how does that relate to us as humans, as Christians? I got to think about that. If I ever lose my savor, I'm not good for nothing anymore. Well, I don't think that's really what that's saying about for us. I think it's kind of taken around about a fit. But talking about losing our saltiness, and I think you've all seen it. How many of you watch TV? How many of you have seen sitcoms that have Christian families or Christian people on them? Aren't they normally the buffoons, the ones that get laughed at, the ones that are trying to live right? They're the ones that are laughed at. A lot of our TV now, the father figure is just tore down. They're the bumbling idiot of the show, you know. And Christians have lost their savor a lot of times, and the world's trying to do that to us. They make us look like we're always the ones that's going above and beyond, you know, on the show and making us look bad, and ridicule. But we as Christians a lot of times have lost our saltiness in the world. It's part of the reason why the world has gone backwards as much as it has, and we know we need to be more salty in the world. But so if I've lost my savor, can I be useful again, or am I just ready to be cast out on the road? That's not really what it's saying there. It's saying about losing the savor. We as Christians are called to be different than the world. If I'm living like the world, I have lost my savor. I'm not good for nothing to be cast out. I can win my savor back and rededicate and show myself to be separate from the world and be that salt. I am the different than the world there. So it's not saying I'm good for nothing and I can't ever get it back. You know, the writer I was studying about this is saying, I mean, it's something that can be got back, but once you lose your reputation, is it tough to get your reputation back? It really is. And we as Christians, people are watching you, and when you slip up as a Christian, most people are there going, saying, I got you. You know, I got you. Well, I didn't think you would say that. Oh, somebody said that to me one time about crush me. You know, that's something coming from you, you know. Don't worry, I won't cussing up a storm or anything. I do like that. I do like people saying, you know what, I've never heard a cuss word out of you. You know, and I take that as a big badge of honor at my workplace and around my people there, that they know Tavener never says that. You know, and I also take it a badge of courage that the people around me, when they're saying it and they say a bad word, they stop and they look over at me and say, sorry. Yes. They see my savor, you know. They see my salt. So to be a difference maker. It also talks about the light. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick that giveth light into the whole house. Everybody remember that song, This Little Light of Mine? I'm not like Gerald. When he preaches, he can sing. I can't. But anyway, you remember the song, This Little Light of Mine, I'm going to keep and light it shine. Put it under a bushel? No. Well, what's a bushel? I think of a bushel basket, you know, with sweet potatoes or something. That's what I think of a bushel. But a bushel back in that time was the same thing as a bowl. And what you would do in those times, they had these little tiny lamps that you would put oil in and you would light it. They didn't really have candles like what we had. But they'd have that little lamp and they'd hold it And most of the time, your rooms in your houses at that time were one room, one or two rooms, and that little candle would obviously light in all directions, right? Well, what they would do is they would take a bowl, and they could put a bowl on it and just kind of put the bowl covering up one side and just light up one side of the room if they wanted to. It was also the method in how they put out those little fires too, because you couldn't try to put it out. How are you going to put it out? Well, they take a bushel or a bowl and set it on it. And being the safety guy, there's the safety triangle there. You got to have oxygen for it to burn, and you put it on there, it takes the oxygen out, and that's how they put it out. So when he used this, they understood what he was saying about the bushel, about putting that bowl over it. But it says we need to put it, if you want to show your light, you need to set it up on a candlestick, up on something there to show it. If you're saved, should you be happy and joyous? Like when I said at the very beginning, no matter what has happened to me this week, I can still be happy because I know it's just a season and God's going to be good to me that very day and that very next night, so I should be happy. So what should I do to the world? I should be shining at everybody all the time. I should be that bright light. I can't. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I should be that bright light shining to everybody all the time. And just that little tiny pinprick of light, that little tiny salt, it means a lot. And then he goes on, even in more verses here where he talks about doing it for the right reasons. And I thought about that. We had Love Loud weekend this past weekend, all of the things that we were doing in the communities. And I don't think anybody here was doing it saying, look what I did. I did this. I served you this. I did that. We're trying to do that, and we need to do that in the right spirit of love there. He talks later about the people that are praying in public and calling things to themselves. They're the difference makers. Well, they're not. It's the little guy over there in the corner that's praying to himself to actually glorify God, not glorifying himself. That is the difference maker there. And it says in Matthew chapter 6, over in that, it talks about the disciples did charitable deeds, to do it in private, conceal the fact that they're fasting, do it in the right means. Do everything to glorify God and not self on that. Psalm 138:8, a couple of last verses and points here. Psalm 138:8, the Lord will perfect that which concerneth me, thy mercy, O Lord, endure forever. Forsake not the works of thy hands. Does anybody in here have purpose? Do you have a purpose? If you didn't, God would have said, sucked you right on up. So he's got purpose. He wants you to be that salt and light. You may not see your purpose, but God can reveal that to you. You have your purpose as a Christian, flat out, he says, is to be a difference maker. His last commands that he told everybody on earth was to what? Go out. Be a difference maker. Go out. So you do have purpose. No matter insignificant you may think you are, you can have a great purpose. As I said, no flood is just because of one drop of water. It's about a lot of drop of water. And we've got a lot of people in here. We can affect a lot. We can keep adding and doing things. The snowball was not made by, a blizzard. One snowflake's not the result of a blizzard the result of that, but it is a part of it, right? And the things that were done on Love Loud weekend, the things that we're going to do in the future in our church, the little seeds that we sow. I was encouraging my Sunday school class. I don't know if you've known, but we have got new cards here. That's a snowflake I can put out somewhere. That's one grain of sand that I can put out somewhere for somebody. And I can keep adding and create that flood by all the different drops that I'm giving out at places, So I'm really big on symbolism if you don't get it on that. Who are difference makers? I ask you that again. when I got to thinking about who's the difference makers out there, and there was a couple that kind of popped in my brain. The Durham Rescue Mission that we sponsor. I mean, that guy that started that was a good thing, a big thing. A lot of us guys have got to hear Jim McComas speak a lot at a lot of our men's conferences, and he spoke here. I think about the mission work that he started. His sermon that he talks about drugs, from losing his own son. I mean, he's a difference maker out there. Can we be a difference maker just like them? They've done great and mighty things. We can do small and mighty things, that add up. 1 Corinthians 12, 4 through 6, lastly, it says, now that there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit, and there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord, and there are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh it all. And here's the statement written by this guy that was said, no raindrop takes any responsibility for the flood, and does a snowflake take the blame for the blizzard, but each one played its part. So what can I do? People that have made differences, it gave some things there, throwing back a sand dollar out to sea, helping people that are in need, speaking encouragement to people, influences countless other people. I think about it the other night when we were handing out cards at Food Line. I got to say, that was kind of different. We had $5 gift cards, and you go walking up to people, they were getting out of their cars, and there's these groups of people standing there watching them, They're like, should I get out or not, Are those Jehovah's Witnesses? What, And they're kind of apprehensive, and then, when they get out of their car, we go walking up to them and say, hey, we're from Union Chapel, we just want to love on you, here's a card for it, and the apprehensiveness kind of wore off, and then we had, those that were there had some good conversations, didn't we, with people? And I'm telling you what, there wasn't a person that didn't walk away after getting that in our conversations that won't smiling, right? There was smiles on everybody's face. Just being that salt, just being that, bringing that smile. And we may not see mass people coming in because of all of that stuff, but we've sowed that seed. God waters it. We are the sowers. That leads me to my last thing to show you tonight. This is not the most pretty of them, and I know some of you got some really nice gardens. But this is what would be called a cucumber. I decided this year, instead of doing a full garden because I'm so busy, I was going to do container garden. So I planted cucumber plants and zucchinis. And buddy, I watered them things, and I was going to make them look good. And I watered them every morning, every afternoon. Didn't do nothing. I mean, I worked hard. I got like one cucumber. I got one zucchini. And I was like, what's going on with them? I put them in not just regular pot and soil. I mean, I put them in pot and soil. I put them in like Miracle Grow. I did all that stuff. I fertilized them things. I watered them every morning, every afternoon. Nothing. After a while, I said, forget it. And you know what? I was walking by one day, hadn't watered that stuff in forever. We went on vacation. I said, forget it. And I walked by one day, and I was like, there's a cucumber. Pulled that thing off. I said, old plant's hanging on, Walked by a little while later, and I looked down there. There's another cucumber. Yesterday, I went out there. It ain't pretty, but it's a cucumber. And I thought about it, just thinking about the lesson there, was that I planted that thing, and I did everything of my own accord to make that thing successful. And what did I get? Nothing. But this was God's creation. God made it grow. And when I walked away from it, took my hands off of it, guess what God did? Pow, pow, pow. He started giving me ugly cucumbers. But they taste just like any other cucumber, especially with salt on it. But anyway. It just showed me that I can do everything on my own accord, but unless I'm doing it for God and I let God have control, you're not going to get cucumbers. You're not going to get good things. But what I had to do is I had to initiate it, and I had to plant the thing and let God do the work on it. And when Brother Josh, at the end of his sermon, from now on, says, go out and do likewise and be salt of the earth, I want you to think about it. I want you to do a lot, but every little grain of salt adds to God's kingdom. God can pile that up. He can do a lot from it there. So pray, invite, place these cards out places. Just put your grain of salt out there, and or your drop, and add to that flood that God can make out of it. All right. All right. Well, thank you for listening tonight. And we want to be a light in our community.